The universe had already decided that this night would change everything. Daniel Cross didn't know it yet, but the moment he turned his head toward the buffet table, humanity's future quietly shifted. At exactly 7 p.m. Galactic Standard Time, the Grand Hall of Concord lit up like a jewel suspended in space. Floating crystal chandeliers bent light into impossible colors, reflecting off polished floors grown from living alloy. This was the Interstellar Trade Summit Banquet, where empires smiled politely while planning how to outmaneuver each other tomorrow. And standing at the center of it all was Daniel Cross, human, age 34, and the youngest CEO ever appointed to a Tier 1 Alliance megacorporation. Humans were still considered newcomers. Clever, ambitious, loud, but not dangerous. Daniel wore a tailored black suit lined with adaptive fiber, his posture calm, his expression unreadable. He had learned early that in a room full of aliens who judged species before individuals, appearing relaxed was its own weapon. Around him moved the giants of the galaxy. The Korth Dominion delegates, massive and stone-skinned, spoke in slow rumbling tones. The Virelli swarm representatives clicked and shimmered, their translucent wings folded in practiced diplomacy. The Salati economancers, thin and sharp-eyed, calculated profit margins mid-conversation. Each one controlled fleets, resources, and histories that spanned centuries. And most of them still thought humans were lucky to be invited. Daniel smiled politely, nodded at the right moments, and listened more than he spoke. That was the human advantage. Humans listened while others assumed they already knew the outcome. That was when something felt wrong. Daniel's eyes drifted, not by accident, but by instinct. Near the far end of the banquet hall, at a table stacked far higher than etiquette allowed, stood a girl who absolutely did not belong there. She wasn't wearing formal attire. She wasn't wearing identification. She wasn't even pretending. She was humanoid, but clearly alien, skin faintly silver blue, hair white and wild like it had lost an argument with gravity. She wore a worn jacket stained with engine oil, boots that had seen vacuum exposure, and a tank top that had no place at a diplomatic event worth trillions of credits. And she was loading food onto her plate like someone preparing for a long siege. Not tasting. Not sampling. Grabbing. A nearby Salati dignitary stared at her in visible horror. Daniel excused himself from a conversation with a Korth trade minister and moved quietly through the crowd. He noticed something else as he approached. Security hadn't noticed her yet. Which meant one of two things. Either she was invisible to standard sensors, or she wanted to be seen. He stopped beside her plate. She didn't look up. She stabbed something purple and steaming with a fork and took a bite, eyes closing in satisfaction. Daniel cleared his throat. Slowly, she turned. Her eyes were pale grey, too reflective, like they caught starlight even indoors. There was no fear in them. No guilt. Just mild annoyance. "Relax," she said casually. "I'm almost done." Daniel blinked. "I'm sorry," he said evenly. "This area is restricted." She glanced at his suit, then at his face, then smirked. "Oh. You're important." "I am," Daniel replied. She shrugged and popped another bite into her mouth. "Cool. I'm just here for the free food." That sentence, simple, careless, absurd, landed harder than any insult he'd heard all night. "You broke into a closed alliance summit," Daniel said quietly, "for dinner." "Not broke in," she corrected. "Walked in. Your security uses predictive threat modeling that assumes no one would come without an agenda." She leaned closer conspiratorially. "Big mistake." Daniel studied her. His internal risk assessment screamed that this was dangerous. But something else, a quieter, sharper instinct, told him this wasn't chaos. This was intent. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated, just a fraction too long. "Owen." "No registry?" Daniel asked. "Freelance," she said. "Independent." "Species." She smiled again, but this time it didn't reach her eyes. "Complicated." Security drones finally began drifting their way. Daniel made a decision that would later be described as reckless, or brilliant, depending on who survived to tell the story. "You're with me," he said. Owen raised an eyebrow. That wasn't a request. She glanced at the drones, then back at him, then sighed dramatically. Fine. But if this gets boring, I'm stealing dessert. Daniel led her away before security could intercept. As they passed through a service corridor, she leaned in. You're human, she said. That explains the curiosity. And you, Daniel replied, are not as simple as you pretend. They stepped onto a balcony overlooking the city orbit of Alios Prime, layers of lights, ships drifting like fireflies against the void. Owen exhaled. Much better. Those rooms are full of liars. You're one of them, Daniel said. She laughed softly. No. I don't lie. I am it. Daniel turned to face her fully. Why are you really here? For the first time, Owen's confidence cracked. Because, she said quietly, someone in that room plans to erase a human colony tomorrow. Economically. Legally. Clean. Daniel felt the air leave his lungs. And you thought stealing food would help. She met his eyes. I needed to see if the human in charge was worth warning. Silence stretched between them. Inside the hall, the galaxy's most powerful beings toasted peace. On the balcony, a human CEO realized that the universe had just handed him a choice. And humanity had never backed down from impossible odds. Daniel Cross kept his face calm, but inside his mind everything sped up. A human colony erased cleanly was not a threat you could punch. Not something you could shoot down with a fleet. It meant paperwork, trade rulings, financial freezes, legal traps, an execution carried out with signatures instead of weapons. The kind of thing the Alliance pretended was civilized. Owen leaned against the balcony rail as if she had just told him the weather. But her fingers were tense around the edge, knuckles pale under her silver-blue skin. You're sure? Daniel asked. Owen's eyes reflected the city lights below like cold glass. I don't do sure. I do. I listened, I traced, I verified twice. Daniel didn't like how calm she sounded. Which colony? He asked. Pale Harbor, Owen replied. Outer Band. Poor Rock. People who built homes anyway. Daniel felt the name hit him like a weight. Pale Harbor wasn't important to the galaxy. Which was exactly why it was vulnerable. That colony is under Terran commercial protection, he said. Owen nodded once. And that's why this is happening during the summit. Daniel's communicator buzzed again. His assistant. His board. 100 urgent tasks. All suddenly meaningless compared to a single word. Pale Harbor. What's the method? Daniel asked. Tell me how they plan to do it. Owen let out a slow breath. They'll declare your shipping contracts non-compliant with revised environmental standards. Then they'll freeze all inbound cargo insurance. Without insurance, no independent hauler docks. Without docking, no supplies. Without supplies. People leave, Daniel finished. Or die, Owen said flatly. Either way, the land becomes cheap. Then a Dominion-backed consortium buys it for scrap value. 2 months later, they discover rare minerals. The same story every time. Daniel stared out at the city orbit. This place was built on deals and polite cruelty. Humans had joined thinking commerce would be safer than war. He now understood commerce was just war with better clothing. Who's behind it? He asked. Owen hesitated. Daniel caught the micropause. You know. Not a single person, she said. A group. A network. But tonight, the spear point is someone you'll be forced to shake hands with. Daniel's jaw tightened. Name. Owen's voice lowered. Counselor Vesh Talren. Daniel's expression didn't change, but his stomach dropped. Talren was Selati, an economic counselor with a reputation for smiling while cutting entire sectors into pieces. If Talren was involved, then the plan wasn't just a side deal, it had political cover. Daniel's communicator buzzed again. This time, a message came through with priority marks. CEO Cross required at main table. Selati counselor requests you. Daniel stared at the text. For a moment, It felt like the universe was mocking him. Owen saw the message and gave a humorless smile. Told you. Daniel turned to her. Why warn me? If you're some kind of freelancer, why take the risk? Owen looked away toward the drifting ships. Because I was on a colony like that once. The words came out quiet. Sharp. Old. Daniel didn't push. Not yet. He simply nodded. Okay. Owen blinked at him. That's it. What did you expect? Daniel asked. I expected you to run back inside and pretend you didn't hear anything, she said. Most people do. Daniel leaned a little closer, voice calm but edged with steel. They invited humanity into this alliance as a minor partner. A useful novelty. Something to profit from. But Pale Harbor has human kids. Human families. That's not a commodity. Owen studied him as if trying to find the lie. So you'll fight. I'll do better, Daniel said. I'll make them regret choosing humans as an easy target. That got a reaction. A flicker of something, interest, approval, maybe hope. Owen reached into her jacket and pulled out a thin strip of metal the size of a finger. Then you'll want this. Daniel took it carefully. What is it? A recorder, she said. Hardwired. Not on the Alliance network. I used it near Tauren earlier tonight. I caught pieces. Daniel turned it in his hand, eyes narrowing. This could be enough to challenge the vote. It could also get you smashed, Owen warned. These people don't lose gracefully. Daniel pocketed it. Humans don't win gracefully either. Owen snorted, amused despite herself. From inside the hall, music swelled as another toast was raised. Daniel could almost imagine the faces, smiles, laughter, controlled delight. The predators weren't hiding. They were performing. Daniel straightened his shoulders. I need you to do something, he said. Owen raised an eyebrow. You're about to give me an order. I'm about to ask for help, Daniel corrected. There's a difference. She waited. Get to Pale Harbor, Daniel said. Quietly. Warn them. Tell them supplies may stop. Tell them to prepare for isolation. Owen's expression sharpened. You think they can survive? They can if we buy time, Daniel said. And if we teach them how. Owen tilted her head. Teach them how. Daniel's eyes narrowed in thought, gears turning. Humans are good at building with little. We learn to survive on bad planets before we ever touch the stars. Pale Harbor's people can make it, but they need tools and information. I'll send what I can, but my shipping will be targeted first. Owen's lips pressed together. So you want me to run the blockade? I want you to be faster than their paperwork, Daniel said. Owen considered him for a long moment. Then she sighed like someone giving up on being sensible. You really are trouble, she muttered. Daniel smiled faintly. You started it by stealing food. Owen pointed at him. I did not start galactic corruption. You started my involvement, Daniel said. Her eyes held his. Fine. I'll go. But I need something in exchange. Daniel didn't even hesitate. Name it. I want access, Owen said. To your corporate database. Your route schedules. Your cargo manifests. If I'm going to keep Pale Harbor alive, I need to know what they'll lose. Daniel's instincts screamed again. Giving an outsider access was insane. But a bigger truth rose above that fear. Sometimes, the only way to win was to stop playing safe. I'll give you access, he said. Owen's eyebrows lifted slightly. You trust me? No, Daniel said honestly. I trust results. And I trust that you hate them more than you hate me. Owen's mouth twitched. Fair. Daniel's communicator buzzed again, more aggressive this time. He couldn't delay any longer. He moved toward the door, then paused. Owen, he said. She looked at him. If I don't win this, Daniel said quietly, Pale Harbor dies. And humanity learns the galaxy's rules the hard way. Wen's expression softened in the smallest way. Then don't lose. Daniel stepped back inside. The banquet hall swallowed him in light and noise. He walked through the crowd like a man heading into a storm he had chosen. At the main table, Councillor Vesh Talren rose to greet him. The Salati's smile was elegant, calm, and razor-thin. CEO Cross, Talren purred. How wonderful. I was eager to meet the human who thinks he belongs at the high table. Daniel offered his hand like a polite weapon. Talren took it, still smiling. And in that moment, Daniel understood exactly why humanity terrified the universe when it finally stopped being polite. Because humans smiled back, while planning how to break the game. Councillor Vesh Talren's smile never reached his eyes. Daniel Cross noticed that immediately. They sat across from each other at the main table, surrounded by diplomats and executives who pretended not to listen while absorbing every word. The music softened. Servants refilled glasses. The room leaned in without leaning. Humanity has grown ambitious, Talren said smoothly, folding his slender hands. Terran dynamics expands faster than projections. Some might call it disruptive. Daniel returned the smile, warm and harmless on the surface. Disruption is just progress viewed from the wrong angle. A few dignitaries chuckled politely. Talren's eyes narrowed just a fraction. Progress requires balance. Regulation. Oversight. Daniel nodded. Of course. Humans learned that lesson the hard way. History is very educational. Talren tilted his head. History is written by those who survive it. Daniel met his gaze. Exactly. The exchange seemed casual. Friendly. Even. But beneath the words, both men were measuring distance, weight, and timing, like boxers circling before the first strike. Across the hall, no one noticed the small, silent ship slipping away from the station's outer ring. The stardust vanished into traffic like a rumor. Owen didn't waste time. The moment she cleared the station's sensor shadow, she rerouted power, cut non-essential systems, and pushed the ship hard. Pale Harbor was far, and every minute mattered. Daniel's access codes worked. That surprised her more than it should have. Terran dynamic shipping routes unfolded across her console. Dense, efficient, human. Where other species optimized for tradition and hierarchy, humans optimized for redundancy. Backup lanes. Alternate suppliers. Contingencies stacked on contingencies. Owen exhaled slowly. You people plan like you expect everything to break, she muttered. She highlighted Pale Harbor. Then she smiled grimly. Good, she said. So do I. Back at the summit, Daniel excused himself after the formalities and retreated to a private conference chamber. His inner circle was already there, human executives, analysts, and one legal advisor who looked permanently exhausted. They're moving on Pale Harbor, Daniel said without preamble. The room went still. That colony barely breaks even, one director said. If the Alliance flags it. They will, Daniel cut in. Tomorrow. Murmurs spread. That's a death sentence, another said. Daniel shook his head. No. It's a test. He activated the hard recorder Awayan had given him. Talren's voice filled the room, fragmented, but clear enough. Words like leverage, pressure, compliance through scarcity echoed coldly. The legal advisor swallowed. This is actionable. It's also dangerous, another executive warned. If we push back openly, they'll bury us in procedure. Daniel leaned forward, hands flat on the table. Then we don't push back openly. Silence. We comply, Daniel continued. Publicly. Completely. Confusion flickered across faces. And privately, Daniel said, we do what humans have always done best. He smiled. We adapt. The first blow landed exactly as predicted. By morning, Pale Harbor's shipping insurance was suspended. Automated notices went out. Contracts froze. The Alliance called it a temporary compliance review. Daniel responded within the hour. Terran Dynamics issued a formal statement accepting the ruling and pledging full cooperation. Councillor Talren read it twice. And frowned. That was too easy, he murmured. On Pale Harbor, panic spread fast. Supply captains turned away. Cargo traffic slowed to nothing. The Colony Council gathered in a half-built dome with power flickering and children huddled nearby. Then the stardust dropped out of jump space. Ern landed hard, kicked open the ramp, and walked straight into the council chamber like she owned it. You're about to be starved politely, she said. And you've got 3 weeks before it gets ugly. The room erupted. Ern raised her voice. Unless you do exactly what I say. They listened. Because desperation listens. In Alliance space, Daniel began Phase 2. Terran Dynamics rerouted dozens of non-essential shipments. Not to Pale Harbor, never directly. That would be blocked. Instead, cargo flowed to fringe stations. Independent traders. Grey market hubs. Places the Alliance ignored because they didn't fit clean categories. Then something strange happened. Food started appearing on Pale Harbor anyway. Not through official docks. Through micro-haulers. Converted mining rigs. Private vessels flying human-made modular containers that didn't require docking clearance. Alliance inspectors flagged the anomaly. But nothing was technically illegal. Humans hadn't broken the rules. They'd stepped sideways around them. Councillor Talren called an emergency session. How is this happening? He demanded. Analysts scrambled. The shipments aren't insured, but they're not Alliance regulated either. They're decentralized. Talren's eyes hardened. Shut it down. We can't, an aide admitted. There's no central node to target. Talren felt something cold settle in his chest. This wasn't corporate resistance. This was something else. On Pale Harbor, Owen worked non-stop. She taught colonists how to strip cargo containers into habitat extensions. How to recycle engine heat into power. How to grow protein cultures using waste algae and human bacteria strains. Humans survive because they reuse everything, she told them. Even mistakes. The colony adapted faster than expected. Children helped. Engineers learned. Old miners remembered tricks from worse days. The colony didn't die. It learned. Daniel watched the reports roll in. Pale Harbor's productivity dipped, then stabilized. Then slowly, quietly, it began to rise. He smiled. The Alliance Economic Council convened again. Councillor Talren stood, irritation leaking through his polished tone. Terran Dynamics has undermined Alliance authority, he declared. They must be sanctioned. Daniel rose calmly. With respect, Daniel said, we complied fully. Pale Harbor survived because independent actors chose to help. That's not a violation. Talren snapped, you orchestrated it. Daniel nodded. Yes. Gasps rippled. Because, Daniel continued evenly, humans don't see systems as sacred. We see them as tools. And tools that hurt people get redesigned. The chamber erupted. Daniel's voice cut through it. You wanted to erase a colony quietly. We refused quietly. And now everyone is watching. Screens lit up across the chamber, media feeds, public opinion metrics, interspecies forums. The story had spread. A small human colony standing against a silent execution. A corporation that played by the rules, and still won. Councillor Talren realized too late what the real mistake had been. He hadn't underestimated Terran Dynamics. He had underestimated humanity. Because humans didn't fight for dominance. They fought for each other. And that made them unstoppable. The Alliance did not like being embarrassed. For centuries, power in the galaxy had moved quietly, through committees, clauses, and regulatory adjustments. Wars were expensive. Paper was cheaper. Cleaner. Invisible. Humans had just made it visible. And the Alliance responded the only way it knew how when subtlety failed. With force. The notice arrived at Terran Dynamics headquarters at 3:12 station time. All human-operated independent trade routes temporarily suspended pending security review. Daniel Cross read it once. Then again. Then he laughed, low and sharp, with no humor in it. So this is where they stop pretending, he said. Around him, his senior team stood in tense silence. Traffic projections collapsed on the main display. Red lines replaced green. Human shipping lanes blinked out one by one. They're isolating us, one executive said. Not just Pale Harbor. All independent human trade. They can't do that, another protested. Half the frontier depends on those routes. Daniel folded his hands. They can. And they did. The room buzzed with overlapping voices, fear, anger, calculation. Then Daniel raised his hand. Silence followed. They think this will scare us back into line, he said calmly. They think humans will retreat if cut off from the system. He looked at each face in turn. They still don't understand us. Out in deep space, and felt it immediately. The Stardust's console lit up with route cancellations, security warnings, threat flags. Alliance patrols began repositioning. Checkpoints activated in places that had been quiet for decades. They're closing the net, she muttered. Pale Harbor's sky darkened as patrol cruisers took up protective orbits, close enough to intimidate, far enough to claim neutrality. The Colony Council panicked. They're going to blockade us, someone said. Oyen shook her head. No. They're going to make an example of humans. She activated her comm. Daniel, she said. They're escalating. I know, he replied instantly. Are you ready? Oyen smiled, fierce and bright. Been ready my whole life. The Alliance's next move came publicly. A formal declaration. Human trade practices have demonstrated destabilizing tendencies. Temporary restriction is necessary for galactic stability. The wording was perfect. Cold. Justified. Across the galaxy, alien markets adjusted. Non-human corporations shrugged and moved on. But among humans, something snapped. It started on the outer colonies. Dock workers refused to unload Alliance cargo. Independent pilots powered down their ships and broadcast a single message. No humans. No trade. Then engineers followed. Then medics. Then data technicians. Human-operated infrastructure across 3 sectors went offline simultaneously. Not sabotaged, not destroyed. Simply withdrawn. Alliance stations still stood. But suddenly, nothing worked the way it used to. Councillor Talren slammed his hand onto the council table. What is happening? An aide stammered. Human workers are resigning. En masse. They can't. Talren snapped. Their contracts. They're not breaking them, the aide said weakly. They're exploiting leave clauses. Emergency exemptions. Cultural protections. Talren's mandibles clicked in agitation. How long until systems fail? He demanded. The answer came quietly. Some already have. Daniel stood before a live broadcast. Not polished. Not scripted. Just human. Humans are not withdrawing from the Alliance, Daniel said calmly, looking straight into the camera. We are reminding it how much of it we built. He gestured behind him, visuals of shipyards, refineries, relay stations. We are adaptable. That's our strength. But adaptability doesn't mean obedience. His voice hardened. You tried to erase one of us quietly. So now we're being loud. The feed cut. Across the galaxy, humans listened. And stayed unified. On Pale Harbor, something extraordinary happened. Instead of collapsing, the colony thrived. Local manufacturing surged. Food production stabilized. Energy output exceeded projections. Owen watched children play under half-finished domes and felt something twist in her chest. They did it, she whispered. Humans had turned a death sentence into a proving ground. The Alliance panicked. Supply chains frayed. Systems designed with human redundancy failed without human hands to adjust them. Ancient civilizations discovered they had grown dependent on a species they had dismissed as junior partners. Councillor Talren was summoned, by beings far older and far angrier. This ends, a voice boomed through the chamber. Now. Talren bowed stiffly. The humans must be disciplined. No, the voice replied coldly. They must be negotiated with. Talren froze. Daniel received the summons hours later. Emergency Alliance session. Human representation required. Owen stood beside him on the Stardust's bridge. They are blinking, she said. Daniel nodded. They always do when they realize they need us. You're about to walk into a room full of species that hate being proven wrong, Owen warned. Daniel smiled slightly. Good. Then they'll remember this meeting. Owen stepped closer. Whatever happens in there, humanity's already changed. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her. So have I, he said. The Stardust turned toward the heart of Alliance space. Toward a reckoning centuries overdue.